Today is Monday, July the 18th, 1911. My name is Clint Reisner, the interviewer, and the interviewee is Ethel Holiner Schwartz. Place of interview, Jewish Community Center. Ethel, we're very happy to have you to become part of Dallas Jewish history.
Thank you.
And I'm going to ask you some questions, and you can elaborate on these questions in any order. But I'm going to start first with your family. Tell me about your family, parents. When and where were you born, and how did you or they happen to settle in Dallas? And what did your parents do for a living?
My grandfather came over and landed in New York on the ship in 1922. And he came over from Poland, and he left a wife and 5 daughters. And he said that he had a dream, and in the dream God told him to come to the United States. And so he did come over, and he worked for 7 years before he brought over his wife and the 5 daughters. And he was in New York, and then he had a relative in Dallas, and he came to Dallas, and he really liked Dallas better because he was more from the country, and New York was such a big city. And my mother was from Poland, and my father was from Russia, which became Poland, and they lived over here. My grandfather had a little grocery store on Forest Avenue, which is now called Martin Luther King Boulevard, and my father had a store on Deep Elm, which was very popular during that time. They called it Deep Elm, and they had 2 children, my brother and me, and there's 7 years difference between them. My brother's the youngest one. And I was born in Dallas, Texas, at Florence Nightingale, which is now known as Baylor Hospital.
What year was that?
1934.
Okay.
Was the year. And my brother was born 7 years later. I kept pestering my mother, you gotta have I need either brother or a sister on that, so.
What did you say your parents did for a living? They had a store in Deep Elm?
My dad had a dry goods store on Deep Elm. And my grandfather had this grocery store on Forest Avenue, which was terrific because after school, I could go over there, and he had all kinds of magazines. He had a pinball machine, he had candy, he had drinks, and of course I could have whatever I wanted and take home as many comic books as I wanted. Wish I had saved some of those comic books. And I went to Hebrew school 4 days a week after I got out of school, and it was called Hadassah Talmud Torah. And what was nice was it was within walking distance, it was just around the corner from my grandfather's store, so it was easy to go there. And we belonged to a synagogue called Hadassah, and that is no longer in existence, but it was also on Forest Avenue.
I see. Okay, very good. Let's elaborate for a few minutes about your childhood. Now, you're telling me where you lived as a child, but what was your neighborhood like, and what did you do for amusement? I believe you probably lived in the Forest Avenue area, right?
Right. At that time, we lived on a street called Peabody, and the Jewish community, there were so many Jewish people, we were all in one section. It's really not like it is today where you have Preston, Hollow, Richardson, Allen. The Jews are all over, but the majority of Jews, not all of them, but the majority of Jews lived in South Dallas. And I went to Colonial Hill School. It was named Colonial Hill because there was a hill you could walk over to get to the school if you were walking. And then I went to Forest High School, which is now still in existence, but it's called Madison High. And the children went, we had some of them went to temple then and other ways, but we were Orthodox. And my grandfather, as I said, had this grocery store. And when they went to start the Hebrew Free Loan, which is in existence today, they started in my grandfather's grocery store. And he was very active in that.
What did you do for amusement in this neighborhood? What kind of amusement activities were you involved in?
Well, then the parents didn't worry so much about the children being out like they do today. And I would play baseball, and we'd play hide and seek and all these outdoor games. And I was one of the first ones chosen for the ball games because I used to like sports a lot. And there was a movie theater right near my grandfather's store called Forest Avenue Movie Theater. And that was fun, and it was nice, it was cool, so we'd like to go to the theater to cool off. And when I was younger, we had one of my close friends, who is still my close friend, Shirley Reback Rothberg. Her father used to be the showhead and the cantor, but he died young. But she had a sandbox, and I used to love to go over there, and we'd play in the sandbox. So we did a lot of outdoor things.
Regarding that neighborhood, it's very interesting. Do you know when it started as a Jewish neighborhood and when it terminated, or so to speak?
No, I'm not sure, but what happened was...
You were born in 34?
34.
It was was it already in existence at that time?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, right.
Well, yeah, South Dallas was, but it must have been like in the late 40s. Somebody sold a house to a black person.
I mean, the beginning of that neighborhood is a Jewish neighborhood.
No, I don't know.
Okay, all right, very well, okay. All right, so you had a lot of amusement activities in your neighborhood, okay. Let's talk about your experiences in school. You said you went to Colonial Elementary School?
Colonial
Okay.
High.
Which middle school did you go to?
They didn't have middle school at that time. You went you went to grade school, and the last 4 years you went to high school. There was nothing in between.
Oh, so it was Colonial and Forest Avenue.
And then Forest Avenue.
What year did you graduate from Forest Avenue?
1951.
Many Jews in your class?
Yes, there are quite a few.
It's interesting. Okay. What was your interest in grade school and high school primarily? Your favorite subjects in your academic interest?
Well, my favorite subject was gym. And English, I liked English, and I was in the thespian group, and we did also the newspaper.
And what was the thespian group? Was it a literary group?
Well, it's dramatics.
Oh, dramatics. Drama, okay.
Drama.
Okay, what did you do after high school?
I went to the University of Oklahoma, OU, and I was there for 1 year. I met my husband, and my husband had been in the service, and he had the bill that he could go to college after being in there. And so I was 18 when I got married, and he was in the service at that time in the Army, and he had been in the Navy, so he did both, the Army and the Navy.
That was the University of Oklahoma, Norman, right?
At Norman.
Okay. And you attended there 1 year. What did you study that first year there?
Well, it was mainly the basics,
Basics.
English, and everything to get started because...
Okay. Let's talk about your Jewish affiliations during your childhood. You've already commented on that, but if you want to what extent was your family's participation in the synagogue?
Well, my mother and grandmother belonged to an organization called Mizrahi, which now is Amid Women, but at that time it was Mizrahi, and they were in the synagogue and all, but when you're younger, you don't really, you're busy with school and Hebrew school, and we weren't in organizations then. Now it's different when you're older, but at that time, the younger children weren't.
But your family was active in synagogue activities.
Right.
Okay. Let's talk about, how did your family celebrate Jewish holidays? Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Pesach?
Well, they celebrated at my parents' house. My grandparents lived with my parents, and my grandmother was an excellent cook, the best cook. She said when she was in Poland at 10 years old, she was already cooking for bar mitzvahs. She was that good. And we would have Passover. We'd have to put 2 long tables up, and we had family over, and we used to have a wonderful time.
The Seder.
For
How
the
many
Seder.
people? That's interesting.
Oh, I'd say 24, something like that.
Wow.
25.
And you celebrated all the Jewish holidays.
Oh, yeah.
In Purim and Pesach and
Yeah.
Yom
We
Kippur.
did.
Did your parents belong to Jewish organizations?
Other than the Mizrahi, I don't know of any
Okay.
others. And
And
the
what was
Hebrew Free
Mizrahi?
Loan.
I didn't quite understand.
They help, they're an organization that really helps Israel, and they're still there today. We saw, they have a place where they help children that need help,
Okay.
and they still do that today. They're very
Mhm.
active for Israel.
But during those years, it was Palestine then, wasn't it? Mizrahi, helping
Yeah,
children in
help the
Palestine.
children there.
Okay.
And
And your parents?
then Young Judea, I was active in Young Judea when I was young.
Okay. So your parents were very active in Jewish organizations as well.
Well, they were.
Mhm. Okay. Did your family have a lot of interaction or some interaction with the Jewish community at large in that area of Dallas?
Well, they would, whenever there were any things going on at the synagogue and all, they would.
Okay.
Mostly the-
What about the Gentile community? Was there discrimination or alienation, or how did?
Well, there was some, but I was fortunate. I didn't really have a whole lot of people of anti-Semitism.
Good.
I didn't really see that.
Not even in school?
Because there were a lot of Jewish people in school. I really never had that problem. I was very lucky.
So with the Gentile community at large, there wasn't a problem then? Okay. Now, I believe you told me you attended Sunday school and you attended a Hebrew school. Let's talk about that for a few minutes.
Well, I got confirmed from a Hadassah Talmud Torah.
At what age?
I think it was probably about 14.
Okay.
And I went as far as I could go. And I would have loved to have gone to a Hebrew high school. And they were talking about maybe having a Hebrew high school at that time. But they just couldn't raise enough money. There wasn't enough people interested that could come up with the money to do that. So now we have it, but it took quite a while for them to be able to start one here.
Okay. We've talked about your working career and adult activities in your college and high school. What kind of work did you do in Dallas, Ethel, if you worked?
Well, when I graduated, I went to work for Sanger Harris.
Okay.
And they would have liked for me to stay. She said, I'll make you a buyer or whatever you want. But I wanted to go to college, so I just worked there during the summer and went to college. And Harlan, my husband, was sent overseas. We hadn't been married but about a year, and he was sent overseas for a year, so I worked for a radiologist, Dr. Miller, and he was downtown. And then, after we'd been married, I worked for Montgomery Ward for 30 years here in Dallas. And then after that, I worked at the preschool here some, and got paid for that. And now I do volunteer work at the JCC gift shop, and I also help with the children. I'm the grandmother to the children here 1 day a week.
Let's reflect on some of the projects that have been most memorable to you during your lifetime.
Well, I think I'm very proud I belong to the Jewish War Veterans Ladies Auxiliary, and 3 years I have worked on a raffle, gathering prizes and coordinating and everything. And they've raised thousands of dollars that went mainly to the Veterans Hospital, and we use some of it to help Israel in different projects that we have done. So I'm very, very proud of that and my work in that. And I also belong to I was president of the Jewish War Veterans Ladies Auxiliaries for 2 years, and I was vice president of Hadassah on their programming committee, vice president of programming. And I've also been secretary and vice president of the Jewish War Veterans Ladies Auxiliary.
Very busy. Other than Jewish organizations, have you ever been involved in any civic organizations like charity or whatever?
I give to charity, but not
Okay.
really.
We've been talking about your family. I would like to recall or go over that again. Now, how did you meet your husband, Harlan, and tell us about it?
Well, we were at OU, and I was not in a sorority, and he was not in a fraternity, but I was dating someone, and he said he had an invite to go to a party given by the fraternity there. And my husband was invited, and he came with a date, and I came with my date. And Harlan, who's my husband, saw me, and he came over and asked the man I was with if he could dance with me. And he said, well, this is the girl I'm going to marry. Well, he hadn't asked me if I wanted to marry him. So anyway, Harlan danced with me, and he said, oh, you're not really going to marry him, are you? And I said, no, because I knew. And so he said, well, can I call you? And I said, oh, sure. So he called, and I checked up on him, on his background too. I wanted to make sure he was Jewish and that everything was good, and I heard good reports on him. So he did call me, and that's how we met.
And where was Harlan from at this time?
He's from Oklahoma City.
Oh, okay. The Holiners, right?
Yeah.
Okay, very good. So, where and when were you married? This is great.
We were married in Dallas, Texas, at a Hadassah by Rabbi Rabinowitz. Rabbi Abramowitz was retired then. Rabbi Abramowitz was the rabbi at Hadassah, and the rabbi at Herzl Heigl Talmud Torah.
And what year was that?
Well, we got married in 1952.
Okay. And after marriage, where did you live? In Dallas?
We moved around a lot. We
Okay.
lived in Fort Smith first, Fort Smith. Then we moved to Oklahoma City. Then we moved to Wichita, Kansas. Then we moved to Houston, Texas. And then we moved to Dallas, then Houston, Texas, and then back to Dallas. And we made so many moves. I said, when I get back, I'm not moving anymore when we get back to Dallas. So we've been here ever since.
And how many children did you have?
We have 3 children.
Let's
and
talk about those now.
We're very proud of all 3 of our children. Very proud. The oldest one is Joel Holiner, and he is the medical director of Green Oak Psychiatric Hospital, and he has a private practice in Medical City on the 8th floor with about 45 people working under him. And he's very well known and very good, and especially people that don't know what kind of medication to be on. We have doctors all over. If they don't know what to prescribe, they send them over to Joel, and he's very good at finding what will help them. And the next
now,
one...
Joel is a psychologist, psychiatrist? What?
He's a psychiatrist, yeah. Joel is a psychiatrist.
Where did he become a psychiatrist?
He went to Southwest Medical School, and what he did was, he graduated from W.T. White High School, and he went into the University of Texas, and so he decided he would try to place out, so he placed out 1 year. So he went in as a sophomore. He said, I probably could place out another year, but it's gonna make me so young. But anyway, he placed out his first year, and he went 2 years, and they have early admittance to become a doctor. And so they interviewed him, and he made a 4-point average all the way through college. Plus his personality is terrific. So they said they accepted him early. So he only had 2 years of college before he went into medical school. And he did his medical school at Southwest Medical School here in Dallas.
Wonderful. And he's still with Green Oaks.
He's with Green Oaks Psychiatric Hospital in Medical City.
Great, great. What about your other children?
Well, my other the second one is Joan Weiser, and she went to W.T. White High School, and then she went to North Texas, and she has become a teacher, and she works at Dealey School, which is over on Edgemere and Royal, and she's very good, very well liked, has become Teacher of the Year there before, and it's a Montessori school, but it's in the Dallas Public
And what is her
Schools.
name again?
Joan Weiser,
Okay.
and she belongs to Temple Emmanuel, and Joel and his family belong to Temple Emmanuel.
And the third child?
And my third child is Sherry Clifton, and she is administrator of the deaf, of the Irving School for the Deaf. And she lives now in Allen, and she has 2 children, and my other daughter, each of my children have 2 children, so we have 6 grandchildren.
Great.
And she's very well liked also.
What a talented family.
Oh, yeah, they're
Remarkable.
wonderful.
Okay, and you have 6 grandchildren, right?
Yes.
Okay. You want to comment on your grandchildren? Are you proud of them? Do you enjoy them?
Yeah, well, my grandson is 20 years old now, and he's at the University of Texas on a tennis scholarship, and he is doing beautifully with that. His sister went to Green Hill School, and she's on the high honor roll and has gotten awards for that. She was nominated for Homecoming Queen. She didn't quite make it, but almost did, which is quite an honor to be nominated. And she's planning to go to Tulane University, and that's my son's 2 children. And Joan, my daughter's children, she has 2 children, and one is William Weiser, and he is autistic, but he's high functioning. He's got Asperger's, and he is very intelligent, especially in a lot of things. And he's going to a private school this year. He had been going to public schools all through the years. And then his brother is Sammy, who is brilliant. He can tell you all the streets in the city, and he's just very, very bright. And he goes to Dealey. And then that's Jones and Mark's. And then my other 2 children are in Allen, and one is Robert, and he is very good. He'd probably go into becoming an electrical engineer. He's very good in math and science, and is making high grades. And this is his first year to get a job, so he's working. And then his sister is Miss Personality. She is really something. She's well liked by everyone, just has a wonderful personality, and is very smart too.
Ethel, you know a lot about Dallas and Dallas connections and history. How has the city changed for you? You've seen a lot of changes here, right?
Right. Well, for one thing, the tallest building when I was growing up, you could look downtown and see the Magnolia Building with the flying red horse, and now the skyscrapers just practically cover the flying red horse. And we used to have at the State Fair of Texas, which we still have. And what was so bad then was that they would not let the black people go to the fair. There was one day out of the whole year that they could go, and that was Juneteenth. And that was the only day that they could go to the state fair. Other than that, they couldn't go. And then in the schools when I was growing up, they had 2 water fountains, and up above it, it would have colored and white. And so the colored people could only drink out of one of the fountains. And then on the bus, when you get on the bus, there was a sign that said colored, and the colored people had to go to the back, which of course has really changed for the better now. And as I said, the one thing is that the Jewish people are all over, and I think it's harder for them to really mingle. There's so many synagogues now and temples, and you really have a good choice, but of course the population has grown too. We have a lot more Jewish people. And it has gotten, there is more Orthodox here, Orthodoxism, because it was a time when the kosher restaurants would try to make a go of it here, and they just didn't have enough people to support it. And now you have several of the restaurants here, kosher restaurants, which is good, and kosher meat markets, more kosher meat markets. There was, we did have a kosher meat market when I was growing up. It was Fromm's, and it was really very, very good. And then we had Reichmann's and different ones. And now you can get it in some of the kosher food in like Tom Thumb's, the grocery stores.
So you've seen a lot of changes here.
Oh yeah, there've been a lot.
And the Jewish community back in the 30s, I would assume, was somewhat more concentrated together, all of them, living
Well, I
in
was
an area.
pretty young in the 30s.
As compared to today, it's very diversified, right?
Right. Well, as I was growing up, I'm sure.
You've explained very clearly what the Jewish community was like at that time, and you've also elaborated on how it has changed. I'm going to ask you some concluding questions. In your lifetime, who are your role models and in life? I'm sure you've had a role model that you was inspired by or respected. Would you like to talk about that? Talk about that for a minute.
Well, I think my role models were my mother and my grandmother who lived with me, because they were so honest, and they just seemed to tell you the right things to do, and I just was very proud of both of them. I used to help my mother when we would go to stores or something, being that she was from Poland. I would do a lot of the answering and telling what they should do and everything. But common sense, both of them had so much common sense, with which a lot of people have the book knowledge, but they don't know what to do when it comes to things.
Your mother was from Poland, right?
Yes, and my grandma.
Did she speak Yiddish?
Yes. We spoke, I told my grandmother to speak Yiddish to me so I can learn some, so I did learn
Let's
quite a
talk
bit.
about that. I want to hear about that. That's
My
interesting.
grandmother was cute. She was short. She was about 4'9" or so. And she used to wear spike heels. I mean, heels this high. And she would walk around in them. And she was the cutest thing. And just very modern. I mean, for someone from Poland, she was just really, just knew things and was up to date and everything. She's really great. And my aunt, my mother's sister, lived in back of us, right? And you could go out of the alley, go straight to each other's houses. So it was really nice.
Did you learn Yiddish? Quite a bit of Yiddish?
Quite a bit, yeah.
The language spoken at home among them was Yiddish then, right?
Well, they spoke English.
English,
but,
okay.
But they spoke a lot of Yiddish, too.
Okay, that's great. What a rich history. You talked about a lot of your family today, and I would like to ask you at this point, you can reflect for a minute, is there anything you would like to add to this interview that you feel is really significant or one of the most significant events in your life?
Well, I think what I'm really most proud of is that I've been married. It will be 59 years, November the 23rd. And I'm very proud of that, and I feel like I've accomplished a lot and Harlan, we still love each other very much, which is really good. You could be married, I don't know how many years, and not like each other. And we're so proud, and we have a wonderful family, and we are together so much, and we do things together. And I guess it's too because we babysat when the children were little. We took care of all of them, and so I think it really means a lot. And that's my greatest accomplishment, I think, is my husband and family. I'm very proud of all of them.
Well, thank you for this great interview, and this concludes our interview today.
Well,
And-
thank you. Thank you very much.